The Lagos sun had long surrendered to a velvety, polluted night, but the energy in the upscale Ikeja neighborhood was just shifting gears. Inside the pristine walls of the Adeyemi household, 16-year-old Simi feigned sleep, her body rigid under the thin bedsheet as she listened. The predictable rhythm of her mother's nightly prayers finally ceased, followed by the soft click of a bedroom door. Simi's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum counting down the seconds. This was the window. Carefully, she slipped from her bed, the floorboards groaning a treacherous complaint under her bare feet. She froze, breath held, listening for any sign her mother had heard. Silence. With the precision of a seasoned operative, she pulled her prized possessions from a hidden stash under the mattress: a tight, sequined top, 4 leather shorts, and a tube of forbidden red lipstick. Each item was a rebellion, a ticket to a world far from her mother's stern warnings and the suffocating scent of incense. Outside, the familiar honk of a car, soft and brief, signaled her ride. Peering through her window, she saw the sleek black SUV idling like a panther in the dark. Her friends, Toke and Brenda, shadows in the back seat, waved frantically. This was freedom. This was living. As she tiptoed past the family altar, a large portrait of Jesus seemed to follow her with sorrowful eyes. A shiver, cold and unwelcome, traced her spine. She heard her mother's voice echo in her memory, a frequent prophecy of doom. Simi, be careful of the friends you keep. They are destiny destroyers. She shook the feeling off, a dismissive flick of her wrist. Her mother was just old school. She didn't understand modern Lagos. Pushing the heavy gate open just enough to slip through, Simi Adeyemi disappeared into the waiting night, leaving her destiny behind. The SUV was a capsule of perfume and reckless ambition. Toke, the self-appointed ringleader, passed along a small bottle of expensive vodka. "To the weekend warriors," she crowed, her laughter sharp and loud. Brenda, quieter but with a hungry glint in her eyes, took a long swig. Simi accepted the bottle, the liquid burning a path of false courage down her throat. "My sugar daddy just landed from Dubai," Toki announced, adjusting her top to show more cleavage. "He said his friends are thirsty for fresh blood. Real big men with fat wallets. You girls better be ready to collect." Brenda giggled, already counting imaginary naira notes. Simi felt a thrill mixed with a pang of guilt. Her own benefactor, an older man named Uncle Femi she'd met at a mall, had promised her a new iPhone if she met him tonight. He was always respectful, never pushing too far, unlike some of the men Toke entertained. The car weaved through the chaotic nightlife of Adeniro Ogusanya Street, where music spilled from every open door and the air thrummed with possibility. They finally pulled up to an exclusive club, its entrance guarded by large bouncers who nodded at Toke with familiar deference. The bass from inside was a physical force, a heartbeat that synced with Simi's own. This was their kingdom. Here, they weren't just schoolgirls. They were goddesses, and the worship was paid for in cash, compliments, and costly cocktails. For Simi, the guilt was a distant memory, drowned out by the music and the promise of a new phone. The club was a sensory overload. Strobing lights cut through a haze of cigarette smoke and expensive cologne, illuminating gyrating bodies on the packed dance floor. The music was so loud it felt like a second skin. Toke, in her element, immediately spotted her target, a thick-set man dripping in gold, and melted into his embrace. Brenda was soon deep in conversation with a sleek-looking guy showing off a key fob with a Mercedes logo. Simi felt a hand on her lower back. She turned to see Uncle Femi, smiling. He was younger than the others, better dressed, and his eyes crinkled kindly. "Simi, you look beautiful," he said, his voice cutting smoothly through the music. He didn't leer. He appreciated. He handed her a small, neatly wrapped box. Her heart leapt. The new iPhone. He led her to a VIP booth where bottles of champagne sat in ice buckets. He asked about school, her dreams, making her feel seen and mature, not just a body to be bought. This was different, she told herself. This was a connection. He wasn't a destiny destroyer, he was a destiny enhancer. After 2 glasses of sweet champagne, Her head began to swim pleasantly. When he suggested they go somewhere quieter to talk, it sounded reasonable. My friend has a penthouse upstairs. Very private. We can see the city lights, he murmured. Simi, buoyed by alcohol and gratitude, nodded. She waved vaguely at Stokey, who gave her a thumbs up, her attention already back on her sugar daddy. Leaving the thunderous noise of the club behind, Simi followed Uncle Femi towards the elevators, clutching her new phone, her trust feeling like a prized possession. The elevator ride was silent, the plush carpet muffling all sound. Uncle Femi's smile remained, but it didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. A cold knot began to form in Simi's stomach, cutting through the champagne haze. The penthouse door swung open to reveal not a cozy apartment, but a sparse, dimly lit space with minimal furniture. Two other men were inside, their conversation halting as Simi entered. They were not like Uncle Femi. They were harder, their eyes assessing her like a piece of meat. The door clicked shut behind her, the sound final and terrifying. Uncle Femi, Simi's voice was a small, frightened thing. The kind facade vanished. Give me your phone, he said, his tone flat, businesslike. What? Why? Now, he barked, the word cracking like a whip. Trembling, she handed over the brand new device. One of the other men stood up, circling her. She's pretty, fresh. He will like this one. Panic, cold and absolute, seized Simi. This wasn't a date. This was a transaction. The stories she'd heard, girls being taken for rituals, for trafficking, flooded her mind. Her mother's warnings were no longer a nagging echo. They were a screaming siren. Time seemed to warp, stretching and snapping like a rubber band. One of the thugs grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. Simi's survival instinct, buried under layers of teenage invincibility, exploded to the surface. She didn't think, she acted. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, she jerked her knee upwards, aiming with desperate precision. It connected hard with her captor's groin. He howled, his grip loosening for a split second. That was all she needed. She spun, yanking her arm free, and lunged for the door. Fingers scrambled for the lock, turning it just as Uncle Femi made a grab for her. She threw the door open, stumbling into the sterile hallway. Stop her! A voice roared from inside. She didn't look back. She ran. Her heels, once symbols of glamour, were now instruments of torture, threatening to twist her ankles with every step. She hit the stairwell, plunging down the concrete steps, the sound of pursuing footsteps echoing above her. Tears of pure terror blurred her vision. She prayed like she had never prayed before. Not the recited verses of her mother, but raw, desperate pleas to a God she hoped was still listening. Please, God, save me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Bursting out of a service exit, Simi collapsed into a grimy alley, gagging on the stench of rotten garbage and urine. She was in the underbelly of the city, far from the glittering club entrance. Sobbing, she ripped off her heels and ran, the rough asphalt tearing at her feet. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave way, collapsing behind a mountain of discarded black trash bags. She listened, her entire body trembling, expecting her pursuers to round the corner at any moment. But only the distant hum of the city and the scuttling of rats answered. They hadn't followed her out into the open. She was alone, shivering in the dark, her sequined top stained and torn. The reality of her narrow escape crashed down on her. A few minutes, a different decision. That was all that had stood between her and a fate worse than death. The iPhone, the champagne, the compliments, it was all a carefully laid trap. She thought of Toke and Brenda, still in the club, laughing and drinking, completely unaware of the predators among them. She had to warn them. But how? She had no phone, no money, and she was miles from home, looking like a wreck. For the first time, the weight of her choices pressed down on her, crushing and absolute. She was alive, but she felt utterly destroyed. The walk home was a pilgrimage of shame and fear. Every shadow held a threat. Every passing car, slowed down by her frantic, limping form, made her heart stop. She stopped to the darkest paths, a frightened animal returning to its den. When she finally saw the familiar green gate of her house, tears of relief mingled with tears of dread. How would she explain this? The gate was unlocked. She pushed it open, its creak sounding like a judgment in the silent compound. Her mother was sitting on the front porch, wrapped in a shawl, a Bible open on her lap. She wasn't sleeping, she was waiting. The look on her face wasn't one of anger, but of a profound, soul deep grief that made Simi's heart fracture. She didn't shout. She simply looked at her daughter, disheveled, barefoot, clothes torn, eyes wild with terror, and whispered, Simi? That one word, filled with a mother's worst fear confirmed, broke Simi completely. She crumpled to the floor at her mother's feet, great heaving sobs racking her body. I'm sorry, mommy. I'm so sorry. He, they, they tried to. The story tumbled out in incoherent, terrified fragments. Her mother gathered her into her arms, holding her tight, her own tears falling onto Simi's hair. The battle was over. Her mother's warnings had been a prophecy, and it had nearly been fulfilled tonight. The following days were a blur. Simi was confined to the house, trapped in a prison of her own making. The shock gave way to a deep, paralyzing fear. She jumped at slamming doors. She couldn't sleep, and the images of that penthouse played on a loop behind her eyes. Her mother, Mama Adeyemi, became her silent guardian. She didn't say, I told you so. She prayed. She cooked Simi's favorite meals. She sat with her in silence, a steady, calming presence amidst the storm in Simi's mind. Simi's phone was gone, her connection to that world severed. She was desperate to know if Toke and Brenda were okay. Using her mother's phone when she was in the bath, she sent a frantic text to Toke. Are you okay? Uncle Femi is bad news. He tried to kidnap me. The response was immediate and chilling. Kidnap K. Simi, stop lying. Uncle Femi is a big man. He was looking for you everywhere. He said you stole his money and ran away. Brenda and I are fine. Mind yourself. Simi stared at the message, a new kind of cold seeping into her bones. The narrative had been twisted. She was now the thief, the unstable one. Her credibility was shattered. The trap had closed in more ways than one. She was isolated, her warning dismissed as the rantings of a guilty girl. The sugar daddy network had protected its own, and she was on the outside, branded a liar. A week later, a different anxiety gripped the school. Brenda had not returned to classes. Whispers slithered through the hallways, but Toke, usually the source of all gossip, was uncharacteristically quiet and withdrawn. Her usual bravado was gone, replaced by red-rimmed eyes and a nervous energy. During break, Simi cornered her near the lockers. Toke, where is Brenda? What's happening? Toke wouldn't meet her eyes. She's sick. Sick with what? Is it serious? Just mind your business, Simi, Toke snapped, trying to push past her. Simi stood her ground, the memory of her own ordeal giving her a new boldness. Tell me, after what happened to me, you owe me the truth. Toke's defiance crumbled. She looked around to ensure no one was listening, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper. It's bad. She's covered in sores. She has a fever that won't break. The doctors, they are running tests. The unspoken word hung in the air between them, heavy and terrifying. HIV. The incurable disease that was the whispered consequence of their lifestyle. The monster lurking under the bed of their sugar daddy fantasies. It was no longer a story. It was Brenda. Toke's eyes finally met Simi's, and for a fleeting second, Simi saw the same raw, unvarnished terror that had haunted her own mirror. Their destiny-destroying party had finally produced its first undeniable casualty. The confirmation came through hushed calls from a weeping aunt. Brenda had tested positive for HIV. The news hit the school like a bomb. spreading through WhatsApp groups and hushed conversations in the toilets. The girl who had dreamed of designer bags and Dubai trips was now a living cautionary tale, confined to a hospital bed, her future irrevocably altered. The principal, a stern woman with a zero tolerance policy for scandal, addressed the senior assembly. She spoke in veiled terms about waywardness, indiscipline, and living with lifelong consequences, her eyes scanning the students, looking for guilt. Simi sat frozen in her seat, her hands clammy. She thought of all the nights, the men, the unprotected encounters Brenda had bragged about. It could have been her. It almost was her. She felt a nausea that had nothing to do with illness. Toke was absent from school that day. Simi heard from a classmate that Toke's parents had found out everything. The sugar daddy gifts, the sneaking out, the parties. She had been pulled out of school, her phones confiscated, and was reportedly being sent to her grandmother's village in the Far East, a common Nigerian punishment for wayward girls. One girl was sick, one was exiled. Simi's home became her sanctuary and her confessional. The fear of being branded a liar by her friends was replaced by a crushing gratitude for her narrow escape. She started talking to her mother, really talking. She confessed everything. The first time she sneaked out, the first drink, the first daddy who bought her a dress, the pressure to keep up with Toke's extravagant lifestyle. Mama Adeyemi listened, her face a mask of pain and compassion. She didn't interrupt. She just let her daughter purge the poison. He called me beautiful, Simi wept. He made me feel special. I thought I was in control. The devil always comes with a sweet package, her mother replied softly, stroking her hair. His mission is to steal, to kill, and to destroy. He doesn't come with a scary face. He comes as an angel of light, promising you everything, while plotting to take everything from you. The biblical verse took on a new, horrifyingly practical meaning. Simi understood now that the devil wasn't just a spiritual concept. It was a handsome man in a club. It was the envy she felt for Toke's new shoes. It was the lie that her value was tied to material possessions. Her mother's faith, which she had always seen as archaic, was actually a sophisticated defense manual against a very real world of predators and pitfalls. She had dismissed it as fiction, only to learn it was the most factual thing she knew. 2 weeks after the assembly, the principal summoned Simi to her office. Simi's stomach clenched, expecting punishment for her association with Brenda and Toke. The office was cold and formal. The principal sat stiffly behind a large desk. Sit down, Adeyemi, she said. Her tone wasn't accusatory. It was curious. I have heard various stories about you, about Brenda, about Toke. I want to hear the truth from you. What exactly has been going on? Simi hesitated. The old her would have lied, protected the code of silence. But the new her, the one who had seen the consequences, knew the truth was the only thing that could possibly prevent another Brenda, another Toke, another Simi. She took a deep breath and she talked. She told the principal everything. The sneaking out, the parties in Lekki and Victoria Island, the sugar daddies, the financial pressures the girls felt to have the latest things, the dangerous competition, her own kidnap attempt, and finally, the devastating news about Brenda. She held nothing back. The principal listened, her stern expression gradually melting into one of horror and dismay. When Simi finished, the room was silent. The principal removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. The school's response was swift. An emergency PTA meeting was called. The hall was packed with anxious parents, including Simi's mother, who sat with a quiet dignity. The principal, with a grim face, addressed the crowd. She didn't name names, but she spoke in stark terms about the dangers they had uncovered: online predation, the sugar daddy syndrome, the kidnapping risks, and the severe health implications. A wave of shock and murmuring rippled through the parents. Then, the principal did something unexpected. We have a student here tonight who has experienced these dangers firsthand and has bravely agreed to share her story as a warning to her peers. She gestured to Simi, who stood up from her seat next to her mother. Her legs felt like water. Walking to the podium, she faced a sea of adult faces, concerned, skeptical, fearful. She clutched the microphone, her voice trembling at first. But as she began to speak, recounting the night of the kidnap attempt, the fear in that penthouse, the chilling moment she realized she was merchandise, her voice grew stronger. She spoke of the pressure to belong, the false promise of easy money, and the heartbreaking price Brenda was now paying. She wasn't preaching, she was testifying. She ended by looking directly at the students present. My mother always warned me about friends that destroy destinies. I thought she meant other girls, but the destiny destroyer is the lifestyle. It's the lie that you can get something for nothing. It almost cost me my life. A profound silence followed, then a single pair of hands began to clap. It was her mother. Soon, the entire hall erupted in applause. Simi's story became the talk of the school, then the talk of the community. She was no longer the girl who stole money from a sugar daddy. She was the girl who survived. Younger girls looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. Some of her former friends who had shunned her now tentatively approached her, asking nervous questions, their own secret fears reflected in their eyes. She became an unwilling ambassador for caution. One afternoon, a woman from their church, Mama Eze, approached Simi and her mother after service. Her eyes were red from crying. "Simi," she said, her voice cracking, "my daughter Chiamaka, she has been sneaking out. She has been receiving gifts from a man. I found these in her room." She showed Simi a stack of recharge card vouchers, all paid for by the same unknown number. It was a classic tactic. Simi's heart ached. She saw herself in Chiamaka. She spent an hour talking to the terrified woman, giving her advice on how to approach her daughter without pushing her away, sharing the signs she wished her own mother had known to look for. As they walked away, Simi's mother squeezed her hand. "You see," she said, "God can use any experience for good. Your pain will now become a shield for others." For the first time, Simi felt her ordeal might have a purpose beyond her own terror. It could be a weapon to protect others. The reality of Brenda's situation was a constant, grim shadow. Simi begged her mother to let her visit. She needed to see her, to offer what? Apologies? Comfort? She didn't know. Mama Adeyemi, after much prayer, agreed and accompanied her. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and despair. Brenda was a ghost of her former vibrant self, lying listlessly in the bed, her skin ashen. Her mother, a weary-looking woman, sat in a chair by the window, her Bible open. When Brenda saw Simi, her eyes, once full of mischief, filled with tears. "Simi," she whispered hoarsely. "I'm here, Brenda," Simi said, taking her hand gently, careful of the IV line. They said it's forever," Brenda cried, her voice small and broken. "My life is over." "No, it's not," Simi said, her own tears falling. "It's different now, but it's not over. You have to be strong." They talked for a little while, Brenda's words punctuated by coughs and fatigue. She confessed her regrets, her fear, her anger at the man who she believed gave her the disease, a big boy who had vanished into thin air. Leaving the hospital, Simi felt a profound sense of loss. Brenda's destiny had been altered in the most permanent way possible. The party was truly over, and the bill had come due. It was a devastatingly high price. Life slowly found a new normal. Simi focused on her studies, the books offering a welcome escape from the chaos of the past months. She started a small volunteer group at school with the principal's permission, a safe space for girls to talk about pressure and relationships without judgment. They called it Destiny Guardians. At first, it was just a few girls, but soon more trickled in, sharing their own stories of creepy online messages, pressure from boyfriends, and the overwhelming desire to have what others had. Simi found a new strength in helping them. She wasn't a perfect role model, she was a scarred survivor, and that made her relatable. She taught them how to check privacy settings, how to identify grooming language from older men, and most importantly, she gave them the language to say no without feeling like they were uncool. She shared everything, holding nothing back about the night that changed her life. The story of the kidnap attempt became her central lesson. They make you feel special first, she would tell the wide-eyed girls. The gift is always the bait for the trap. She was using her nightmare as a teaching tool, transforming her pain into power. Her mother's warnings, once a source of irritation, were now the foundation of her mission. One day, an official-looking letter arrived for Simi. It was from a non-profit organization focused on youth advocacy and against human trafficking. They had heard about her story through the community grapevine and her work at school. They were hosting a Pan-African Youth Conference in Abuja on navigating modern predators and wanted her to be a guest speaker to share her testimony alongside psychologists and security experts. Simi was terrified. Abuja? A conference? Speaking alongside experts? She wanted to refuse, but her mother insisted. "This is a door God has opened," she said firmly. "You must walk through it. Your voice is needed on a larger platform." With tremendous support, Simi prepared. She wrote and rewrote her speech, practicing it in front of her mother and her Destiny Guardians group. The day of the conference, her knees knocked as she stood backstage in a large, fancy auditorium filled with hundreds of people. When her name was called, she walked to the podium, her heart pounding in her ears. She took a deep breath, looked out at the audience, and began. "My name is Simi Adeyemi, and I am a survivor of a kidnap attempt by a man I called Uncle Femi." Her speech was raw and powerful. She spoke not as a victim, but as an empowered young woman who had learned a brutal lesson. She connected the dots between the desire for material things, the vulnerability of teenagers, and the sophisticated tactics used by traffickers and predators. She talked about Brenda, using the pseudonym My Friend to protect her privacy, highlighting the health consequences. The audience was captivated. You could hear a pin drop. After her talk, a swarm of people surrounded her. Other teenagers thanking her for her bravery, organizers from other countries asking her to speak at their events, journalists requesting interviews. A woman from the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, gave her her card. "We need real stories like yours for our awareness campaigns in schools," she said. "You have a powerful gift." Simi was overwhelmed. Her local cautionary tale had just gone national. She had transformed her pain into a purpose that was bigger than she ever imagined. On the flight back to Lagos, she looked out at the clouds, a sense of profound peace settling over her. She had found her calling. Returning to school as a minor celebrity was strange. Some teachers treated her with newfound respect, while others were still wary of the scandal she represented. The whispers followed her in the hallways. But now, there were whispers of awe, not gossip. She continued her Destiny Guardians meetings, which had now doubled in size. The girls saw her not just as a peer, but as a leader who had been to the edge and returned with wisdom. One afternoon, a junior secondary school 3 student, a small timid girl named Simi Jeje, she said, using the honorary term for big sister. "A man on Instagram has been talking to me. He says he's a model scout. He wants to meet me alone this weekend to take pictures. He sent me money for transport." Simi's blood ran cold. It was a different approach, but the pattern was exactly the same. She put her arm around Nneka. Show me everything, she said gently. Together, they looked at the messages. Simi pointed out the red flags, the secrecy, the pressure, the flattery, the money. She helped Nneka block the account and reported it to the platform. She had just prevented another disaster. The cycle was being broken, one girl at a time. Simi's work caught the attention of a popular Nigerian talk show host, known for tackling social issues. An invitation came to be a guest on Real Talk with Ngozi. This was television, national television. The old Simi would have been thrilled for the fame. The new Simi was terrified of the exposure. But she remembered Nneka's scared face. If her story could reach one more girl, it was worth it. The show was live, under the bright studio lights, facing the charismatic Ngozi. Simi told her story again. She was calmer now, more measured, but the emotion was still real. Ngozi asked tough questions. Do you blame your friends? Do you blame your parents? What is your message to the Uncle Femis out there? Simi answered with a grace that belied her age. I blame the culture that tells girls their value is in their appearance and their possessions. I blame the men who exploit that. My message to them is that we see you. We are aware now, and we are fighting back. The studio audience erupted in applause. During the show, they displayed a dedicated phone line for stories and questions. The producers were stunned. The lines were flooded with calls from young girls across the country sharing similar experiences. Simi's story had unleashed a tidal wave of testimony. It was no longer just her story. It was the story of a generation of Nigerian girls. With the television appearance came a new level of scrutiny. Online, comments were mixed. Many praised her courage, but others, hiding behind anonymity, called her a liar, an attention seeker, a spoiled girl who was trying to become famous from her mistakes. Some even accused her of making up the kidnap story to cover for her promiscuity. The negativity was a sharp sting. For a day, she was devastated, wanting to hide from the world again, but her mother sat her down. When you stand for the truth, the devil will always send his agents to attack you, she said. Consider the source. Are these people who know you? Are they living in light? Number, they are voices from the darkness, and you must not let them dim your light. Simi realized her mother was right. The negative comments were from the same darkness she had escaped from. They were trying to pull her back. She made a decision. She would focus on the good, on the girls like Nneka who she had helped. She would be a light, no matter how many voices screamed from the darkness. She couldn't save everyone, but she would save those she could. A formal invitation arrived from Simi School. The Board of Governors, impressed by her advocacy and the positive light she was bringing to the school despite the earlier scandal, wanted to officially recognize her. During a special assembly, the principal called her forward. She spoke about courage, redemption, and using one's experience to serve others. She then announced that the school was formally adopting the Destiny Guardians Club as an official school society, with Simi as its founding president. Furthermore, they wanted her to lead an annual school-wide seminar on safety and awareness, making her story a permanent part of the school's curriculum for incoming students. Simi was handed a certificate of recognition. As the students applauded, she looked out at them. She saw the curiosity, the admiration, and the hope in their eyes. Her journey, which had started with sneaking out of that very assembly hall, had come full circle. She had returned, not as a disgraced student, but as a redeemed leader. Her mother, sitting in the parents' section, cried tears of joy. The destiny that had almost been destroyed was now not only intact, but was shining brighter than anyone could have imagined. The work continued. Simi, now working with the NAPTIP official she'd met, helped develop relatable content for their social media pages. She filmed short, punchy skits that dramatized the grooming process, showing how a simple compliment online could escalate into a dangerous situation. Her face became a recognizable symbol of the fight against trafficking and predation for young people. She also never forgot Brenda. She visited her regularly, updating her on everything that was happening. Brenda's health had stabilized with medication, but her spirit was still fragile. During one visit, Simi had an idea. Brenda, your story is powerful. You may not be able to go out and speak, but your voice matters. Would you would you want to help me write the scripts for the skits? You know the mindset better than anyone. A faint light flickered in Brenda's eyes for the first time in months. It was a purpose, a way to contribute from her sick bed. She nodded slowly. Yes, she whispered. I want to do that. The survivor and the victim joined forces, using their combined pain to create a shield for others. A year passed. The memory of that night was still sharp, but it no longer held terror over her. It was a reference point, a lesson etched into her soul. She was preparing for her final WAEC exams, her future stretching before her, bright with possibility. She had decided to study sociology and psychology at university to better understand the forces. One evening, she was walking home from a study group with two new friends, real friends, who liked her for her character and not her connections to sugar daddies. As they passed a popular hangout spot, she saw a familiar car, a sleek black SUV. The window rolled down, and a young girl, probably 15, leaned out, laughing. In the driver's seat was a man in his late 30s. He caught Simi's eye and winked, a gesture that was once flattering but now made her skin crawl. It was happening all over again. To a new girl, the cycle was endless. Without thinking, Simi acted. She excused herself from her friends and walked straight up to the passenger side of the SUV. The young girl looked at her, annoyed. Yes? What do you want? Simi ignored her and spoke directly to the man, her voice steady and loud. Good evening, sir. Are you her father or her uncle? The man's smile vanished. Who are you? Mind your business. This is my business, Simi said firmly. This is everyone's business. This young lady is a minor. What is your intention with her? People on the street began to stop and stare. The man, uncomfortable with the attention, scowled. She's my cousin's daughter. I'm picking her up. Really? Simi said, turning to the girl. Is that true? What is your mother's phone number? Let's call her right now to confirm. The girl's bravado collapsed into panic. The man, realizing the situation was escalating, cursed under his breath, rolled up the window and sped off, leaving the girl standing on the curb. The girl stared at Simi, a mixture of embarrassment and anger on her face. You ruined my night, she shouted. I might have saved your life. Simi replied calmly, though her heart was racing. The crowd of onlookers dispersed, murmuring about the dramatic scene. The girl, whose name was Chidera, initially refused to talk to Simi, furious about her humiliation. Simi didn't budge. She bought her a bottle of malt and sat with her on a nearby curb. Let me tell you a story, Simi said. And she did. She told her about the parties, the gifts, the SUV, and the penthouse. As she spoke, Chidera's anger faded, replaced by dawning horror. The man who had just driven away had used the exact same lines on her. The pattern was identical. By the time Simi finished, Chidera was crying. He promised to take me to a movie premiere, she admitted. He said I was the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. Simi put an arm around her. They all say that. It's their script. She walked Chidera home and explained everything to her bewildered parents. It was a difficult conversation, but it was a necessary one. Another girl had been pulled back from the brink. The work was never done. Simi's final year in secondary school was coming to a close. At the graduation ceremony, she was named the valedictorian, not just for her grades, which had improved dramatically, but for her leadership and contribution to the school community. As she stood at the podium to give her speech, she looked out at her classmates, their faces eager, ready to take on the world. She didn't talk about the usual themes of success and achievement. She talked about discernment. She talked about the wolves in sheep's clothing that awaited them in university, in the workplace, in life. The world will promise you many easy paths, she said, her voice clear and strong. But remember, the sweetest sugar often hides the deadliest poison. Your destiny is the most valuable thing you own. Guard it with your life. And if you see a sister about to lose hers, have the courage to be a destiny guardian for her too. Her speech was met with a standing ovation, not just from students, but from parents and teachers who knew the profound truth behind her. Thank you for watching. Please write your comment down in the comment section on what you think about the teenage girls' behaviors and their outcomes. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel so that you will be notified whenever we post new videos.